Hello team, it is me, Tyson the Trainer, obviously. That's my new intro now. Just telling you who I am and then being like, obviously, you know who it is. That's basically what it is. I am back with another episode. I am caffeinated, still weirdly a little bit tired, but you know, we're getting through the day. We're doing what we need to do. It is Monday. It is time for a new podcast. Today's podcast is all about gaining muscle, getting jacked, getting wacky, getting yoked, getting all those good things that people talk about. That's what I want to talk to you guys today about, because currently I am in the process of getting big, getting yucky, getting yoked, all those words that we think about. And I was like, you know what? It's always good to kind of talk a little bit about what I'm doing, because it's just relevant topics that I can cover, and you know, things that are on the top of my mind, just easier to cover for the most part, if that makes sense to you guys. You know what I'm saying? I hope you do. So, I'm just gonna shut this door really quickly. I don't know if you guys could hear that background noise. But wanted to get rid of it anyways. So, the gaining phases. Gaining muscle, getting yucky, getting jacked. Why do I want to talk about this today? Because I guess I just want to give you guys some information about how to do it correctly if your goal is to actually gain muscle, and just how to give it a red hot crack, okay? Because a lot of people like the idea of gaining muscle. I think we all like the idea of gaining muscle, you know, like I would like to look, whether you're a female, you want to look more toned, more defined, bigger glutes, smaller waist, maybe some bigger not big shoulders, but you know, toned arms and shoulders. From guys, just getting fucking jacked everywhere for the most part, I'm assuming. Like as a guy, I think you can get everything bigger if you could. I would, ideally, you know. And so with that, you know, gaining muscle is the goal that most people are going to the gym for the most part. Like, you know, gaining muscle, losing fat, obviously that side of things. Getting healthier is obviously important too, but, you know, the gym is there, a lot of people to look better overall, you know. I really think a lot of people wouldn't exercise if you physically couldn't see a difference. Not saying everyone wouldn't, because for someone like me, it's great for my fucking mental health. Like, I need to exercise, otherwise I will go like crazy, because it's just an outlet for me. So as much as I love the physical side of things, I also love it mentally, and then it just gets me away from the day. Plus I always like to push myself a little bit harder. So I like to think that because my health focus is top tier, that I would still exercise regardless, right? But again, you know, the physique side of things does come into play. And what you want to think about, like if you are someone who actively wants to gain muscle, the first thing you need to consider is, are you at a low enough body fat to be able to decide that? Because a lot of people decide, or they say, I want to lose fat and gain muscle. Yep, okay, sweet. Or like, oh, you know, should I lose fat first or should I gain muscle first? If you are someone who has more body fat than you would like, focus on losing body fat. Because what most people think, I want to lose fat, I want to gain muscle. If you are slightly, or you know, more overweight than most people, when you lose body fat, you will just have tone and definition because you have muscle mass underneath regardless. If you are someone who's quite new to the gym, or you haven't been training seriously, and you start to follow a structured training program and you're eating well, you will gain muscle and lose body fat. You're in the ideal situation. So anyone who hasn't been consistently training with a good routine, if you are slightly heavier or you don't have or you still have body fat to lose, do the deficit first. Lose the body fat, because a lot of people, they think they want to gain muscle, but when you lose the body fat, you're like, oh, I've got definition under here. I look good. Like, I'm happy with where I'm at. And that's fucking awesome. Like, that's where you want to be. For a majority of people, you don't need to cut, gain, you know, do all these different things. You basically just need to lose some body fat, work on maintaining that loss, and you're going to be pretty happy with where you're at. You know, because if you're in the early stages, again, within the first 3 years, if you're just focusing on consistency with your nutrition, with your training, you can get a lot out of your body composition by focusing on eating well, eating high protein, training consistently, and losing body fat, okay? So really take that like into consideration, which means if you're someone who's still in the early stages and you're like, oh, okay, well, you know, Tyson just said I need to do that, then don't even worry about this podcast. This is for people who are like literally wanting to make sure they're going to gain muscle, like actively wanting to gain muscle, okay? Like that's your main focus, is what a gaining phase is for. Like You don't care if you gain some body fat along the way, because guess what? You're going to gain some body fat along the way, right? That's a given. So this is someone who is like, okay, I'm leaner. I am lean relatively. I want to work on packing on some muscle over the next X amount of months. I'm going to go into this by actively going to gain weight and try and develop muscle mass, okay? This is for you people. And again, this is for you if you're someone who's new, or you've only been training for a few years, now you're getting some structure, but you're relatively on the leaner side or skinnier side and you need to bulk up, this is what you need to focus on, okay? Or again, if you're someone who is lower body fat because you've lost the body weight and you are actually like, you know what, I think I need to put on some muscle mass now, this is for you, okay? If you're in that confused state where you're like, do I gain muscle, do I lose fat? You need to lose fat for the most part. That's what most people are going to be having to push towards, okay? So focus on that. Now, with that being said, let's talk about gaining phases. So if you are going to commit to a gaining phase, the first thing you need to be aware of, like I said before, is you're going to gain body fat, okay? There is no ifs, there is no buts, there is no fucking way around it. Unless you are running all the gear, all the steroids, you might not gain body fat, but I'm talking to you guys who are probably not enhanced, and you have to focus on, accepting a little bit of fat gain. We will never gain predominantly 100% muscle mass. Unless you're a genetic outlier, which I am super fucking jealous of, it's just not going to happen. So accept or understand that you have to accept that body fat gains are going to accrue when you are in a gaining phase. And also, if you can't commit to this for at least 4 months, then gaining is not for you. All right? Because you can't gain muscle in a fucking month or in 6 weeks or in 8 weeks. It takes time, okay? A long time to gain muscle. A very long time to gain muscle. If it didn't, we'd all be fucking jacked, right? So the time component is super important for this. And a lot of people, they get a month in, I don't know if I like this anymore. I can't see my definition. I'm getting scared. I'm putting on body fat. Like I'm fucking freaking out. Like if that's you, don't do this, okay? This is also why having a coach is very important, for someone to look at you objectively and to keep you pushing through the gaining phases. Like I have female clients. How many am I thinking have done like really fucking good gaining phases? I'm only going to say like 6, I think, have done really good gaining phases. Most of my female clients aren't going to gaining phases. The ones that have done it have been on the leaner side, have accepted that they're okay with getting a little bit fluffier than they would like, and they all committed to at least, I think actually we all have done 6 months or more. One client did like 8 months after her comp prep, which she fucking just gained a lot of muscle. One client basically just was lean as it is, and she worked on a gaining phase. Everyone who's done it has put on weight from when they started, at least 4 to 6 kilos more than they were. And as they've cut back down, their waist measurements have all been the same or lower while being 4 to 5 kilos heavier. That's what you fucking want if you're a female, right? Bigger glutes, if you want bigger legs or whatever you're focusing on, having those things bigger while that waist is coming in smaller. And you can do that. You just have to commit to the process. Again, progress takes time and consistency. As a guy, same thing. You might be like, I'm going to try and go on a gaining phase. Guys are a bit more aggressive than females when it comes to gaining weight, right? Do not fucking gain weight fast. If you're a male, you're gonna gain more fat than muscle mass, which is not ideal either. All right. So it's very tough to be able to accept that you've got to do this for a long time. You should get a coach so that someone's objectively looking at you and being able to keep you through the tough times and making sure you're gaining where you want to gain for the most part. And just to remind you, you've got to keep pushing forwards. Okay. So a 4-month minimum commitment is what you got to think about. Ideally, the longer, the better. Like if you could actually dedicate, be like, all right, instead of dieting this year, New Year's, I'm going to diet. Instead of doing that, I'm going to focus on gaining muscle from January 1st until September. 9 months. Is that right? Yeah, 9 months. Okay. 9 months of just slow gaining. In that 9 months, you might have like 2 or 3 mini cuts. So over that 9 months, let's say you've gained between, let me think about a number here. 4 to 9 kilos, okay? Whether you're a male or a female, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't say 4, I'd want more than 4. Let's say 5 to 9 kilos. Obviously, the male would be on the higher side, or if you're a heavier female, on the higher side. If you're a lighter, you're on the lower side, okay? After that, you've now go into a dieting phase from September until the start of November. 8 to 10 weeks, because you've done your mini cuts, you haven't accumulated a huge amount of muscle mass. You're coming into the start of summer, which is November. You've dedicated that 9 months to gaining. I'm always going to guarantee you're going to look fucking way better focusing on that gaining phase versus, oh, I've done 2 months, I'm getting scared, I'm going to cut, and then waiting a few months, oh, I might try and bulk again for another month or whatever it is. Oh, you know, like, you have to give this a good commitment. Now, again, you don't have to do 9 fucking months, but at least 4 months of gaining would be ideal, okay? And again, the longer you can sustain it, the better, right? So, with that being said, of your expectations about what you should be thinking about with the gaining phase, how do we go into this? So firstly, you have to obviously calculate your maintenance calories. You should either know this already with what you've been doing, or you can use my calorie calculator on my highlights. I'm not going to explain it here. There's been so many things I've talked about maintenance. Go fucking figure it out, okay? You know your maintenance calories. Now from here, we want to be gaining nothing too quick, right? Ideally, I'm thinking about like 0.25% of body weight a week, give or take. Yeah, 0.25, anywhere between like even like 0.1, right? Between 0.1 and 0.3 would be ideal, okay? Which is very slow for the most part. So if you're 60 kilos, that's like, you know, if you want to gain between 0.1 to 0.3, that's like 60 grams to 180 grams. If you're 90 kilos like me, that's like 90 grams up to 270-ish, 300-ish grams, 270-ish, right? The more aggressive you gain, the more likely you are going to accumulate fat mass. So that's why low, slow, and long is the way to go, okay? A low surplus that's very slow, that's slowly accumulating weight over time is the best way to go about this. So how do we guess this with, obviously like going from maintenance? I always say increase your calories by 10% at first, all right? So whatever you're at, bump them up by 10%. Most of you will probably be around the 2,000 to 3,000 mark. That means 200 to 300 calories extra a day. That first week, your weight is going to jump up. You're going to have more food in your stomach. You're going to have all these things. It's like the opposite of when you diet, okay? Like you're at maintenance, you have a week of extra food, your weight's going to automatically jump up because of food volume, because of carbohydrates, potential sodium increase, everything. Like, that's just going to make that scale jump up. The opposite when you diet. That first week, you're decreasing food volume, you're decreasing your overall calorie content. You're most likely going to cut some carbs out because calories are going down, and you get a little fucking whoosh at the very start. So we ignore the first week data, okay? Take your measurements before, obviously, you do this. Yeah, week 1, take your measurements. Ignore week 1's jump. From week 2, measure what your fluctuations are and then look at the running average. We need to look at averages with weight gain. We do not look at daily fluctuations. So after week 2, let's say you've weighed yourself every day, you have a look, you're 70 kilos, you've gained 140 grams. Boom, you're on 0.2% of your body weight a week. Perfect. Very happy with that, right? You're on the money. Is that right? 0.2? Yeah, you're on 0.2% of your body weight a week, which is fantastic, which is what we want. So you stick to those calories. If you didn't gain any weight that second week and nothing's changed, all right, now you can bump up your calories by 100. I like to do small increments by 100 extra calories for every time you plateau, just because, again, I'm more on like the safety side of small increments versus massive jumps, okay? If you're someone who's extremely lean and you don't give a fuck, then you can do bigger jumps. But again, more calories in does not mean more muscle mass accrued. Accrued, I can't even say the word. It doesn't mean more muscle mass gained, okay? So after that second week, if you're gaining, you're in a sweet spot. If it's going up continuously too quickly, maybe you need to taper it back a little bit. Just keep an eye on, obviously, how your weight goes. Remember, between 0.1 to 0.3%. If it goes like 0.4 and you're not fussed, again, it's 1 fucking week, it's 2 weeks. It's not going to be like you're continuously gaining that quickly. It's okay, right? The more experienced you are, the slower you want to go. Again, if you're in the early stage and you're gaining 0.4, 0.5% of your body weight a week and you're fucking really lean, then whatever, go for it, right? You've got the capacity to do it. So with that, then every week you're taking your week averages and you're seeing, is the trend going up slowly? right? That's what we want to be looking at. Is that trend going up? If at any point it's not going up, you add 100 calories extra for the next week. But always give yourself 2 weeks, just like I talk about with dieting, always give yourself 2 weeks of like, have I plateaued? So if 1 week, that average is the same as last week, let's say you've gone from, you're at 70.5 for the first week and you're at 70.5 for all that second week is 2 averages, and that weight just isn't like there's no fluctuations that have jumped higher than 70.5, let's say, then you increase your calories more by 100, okay? If it's been a week and nothing's changed, don't stress. Give it 2 weeks. Because again, there's nothing wrong with taking it a little bit slower with gaining and erring on the side of caution, but what we don't want is constant stagnation and like, oh, I don't know, like maybe I'll stick to this for another week. Like we don't want to prolong this surplus and spin our wheels. We want to make sure we are actively gaining weight in a surplus. The goal is to gain muscle. You are working hard in the gym. You have to fucking be putting weight on, okay? So if you are going to give this a good go, do not get scared of the scale weight going up. And this is actually something that I still struggle with. Like, just because of old eating behaviors and old disorders that are years old, like I haven't had that stuff in fucking, 5 years now, I still struggle with it, with the scale going up. But it's what my goal is. And I have to remind myself that it's okay to go up. And I can't be like, oh, maybe I'll just, maybe I won't eat as much today type of thing. Like it's pushing that uncomfortableness to keep going forwards. And thankfully, I have a coach that keeps me on track. If he sees things aren't moving as fast as he wants, he pushes those calories up. So I've got that objectiveness from a coach, all right? So just keep tracking, do exactly like you do with fat loss. You take your measurements every weekend, you take your weight averages, and then you see, are things moving up? Now, the thing with measurements, because you're trying to gain muscle mass, you're not going to see measurements jump up like they go down on a fat loss phase. The reason for this is because when you're gaining muscle mass, you can kind of bias where you want to gain muscle based on the volume and frequency you're training a muscle group. You want to get bigger arms, you train arms more. You want to get bigger glutes, you train glutes more frequently. And then you can bias, like obviously some of the muscle mass going to there. But there's still going to be muscle mass accumulated everywhere, right? So we're not going to see massive measurement changes every week or every few weeks is the first thing. But secondly, the reason the measurements will be slower is because muscle is more dense than fat, okay? So when we say dense, I'm assuming you guys would know, like, a kilo is a kilo. There's this whole thing about, a kilo of muscle weighs more than a kilo of fat. Like, no, it fucking doesn't. A kilo is a kilo. Like, do you know measurements? But if you look at like what a kilo of muscle looks like versus a kilo of fat, it is very, very different, okay? Like the space that it takes up is a lot less because it is dense versus what fat would take up. So when you are losing body fat and you have body fat around areas like your arms, your legs, for guys, it's the waist and stuff like that, we see measurements go down because the fat is occupying more space. And when the fat is going out of the cell and it's shrinking, it's going to make much more of a difference. For those of you watching on the camera, I'm like making like a circle with my hand and then just like, when I say shrinking, like, making it smaller. So it's like, it's just the fat cell is becoming empty basically. And you're going to see a measurement drop because more space is disappearing. Sorry. Is that the word? More space is disappearing? Yeah, the space that it's taking up is now less, okay? With muscle mass, it's not gonna increase a huge amount over a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and it's a very slow process. So you may not see measurements changing all the time. It's a slower thing, which is why we've got to look at scale weight. And that's basically gonna be our biggest indicator. Like if you're doing progress photos, that's fine to do progress photos, but just remember, when you get bigger, and you are gaining muscle, which is also going to accumulate with body fat, you are not going to look as toned or defined. So you might look in the photos and be like, oh, I'm looking worse, I'm looking chunkier. Yeah, because you are fuller, you have more food, you're not going to see as much muscle separation because you've accumulated a little bit of body fat too. So this is why like photos are going to be okay, And as long as like when you look at your photos and your measurements, as long as like your waistline for the males and females, as long as that waist is not expanding like a lot, like if we're seeing weight continuously go up and that waist is like because it's going to go up, the waist will go up, very small increments going up, as in like half a centimeter every 2 to 3 weeks, right? So like, let's say at the end of your gaining phase, you've gained like 4 centimeters on your waist, but you've been doing that for 4 months. A centimeter on the waist per month is quite small, which is a good thing. You do like a 2-week fucking mini cut, that'll definitely be gone. So it's okay, but we just want to keep those things in check, which is why doing measurements is good, but it's more about doing the measurements to check where I'm prone to store fat, I guess you would say, is that going up quickly? Because if it is, you're most likely gaining more body fat than you are muscle mass, and we need to change things up. So that's a good way to keep an eye on it. And you can still do your progress photos and have a look there. And if you notice the waistline changing, or like, your stomach is starting to expand, that's a good indicator. If you notice like more chunk, but a lot of you will get up in your head about looking at your photos and be like, oh fuck, I'm gaining too much body fat. No, all right, slow down. This is why you have someone for external feedback. Do not be your own fucking coach if you know you can get in your head. And that's like me. I have a coach to help me gain muscle just because I know I'll get in my fucking head, right? And it's very easy for me to bitch out and be like, oh, nah, this isn't working for me. So having objective feedback, whether it be from a friend or a coach, is a really good idea. And basically, all you're going to do from there is keep tracking your measurements, your photos, your weight every week, looking for small increments. When you stall, you increase by 100 calories, you keep moving forward until you stall again. Because the good thing is, you're going to be able to eat way more food. Like your bulking phase will most likely have you eating a lot more food continuously because your body will just adapt. We all have set points when we're trying to lose weight that it gets harder. Same thing as gaining weight. Like I'm on 4,800 calories at the moment. And we're like, oh, that's a fucking good problem to have. Well, it is and it's not, okay? Like, yeah, it's a good problem to have that I can eat whatever the fuck I want, but it is costly, firstly. Secondly, it's a fucking mission, man. Like I'm full all the time. I've got to shit like 3 times a day. Like it's a lot. So, it's always, again, like, first world problems, but it is the struggles that you're going to have with the food. And this is the funny thing. I find the brain so interesting because when you're dieting, there are trigger foods we want to keep out of the house and things like that because we know we'll go over. But when you're gaining, you can keep food in the house and you can look at food and not get the appeal of food anymore. Like Messina. I fucking love Messina, right? If I'm dieting, I can go get a liter ice cream and I know I could eat a liter in a night. No dramas at all, okay? Last week, I brought Messina and it was in my freezer for 4 fucking days. 4 days! What the hell, man? It's just because, like, you just get sick of food. So this is actually how you can really fix a fucking food relationship issue too, is actively trying to gain weight, go on a surplus, because you can have more foods in your diet that are quote unquote enjoyable, and really fix that food issue for the most part, because your food focus goes down, your hunger goes down, everything, it's kind of a good thing to be able to put yourself in a better place. All right. So I've talked about that, what you should be aiming for 4 months minimum. Now, mini cuts. A mini cut is basically a short amount of time of a dieting phase where you go very aggressively as an interim to your gaining phase, all right? So what I mean by this is you may gain for 10 weeks or 12 weeks. You put on a little bit of weight over that time, and you're like, all right, I need to pull back a little bit. I need to do a quick mini cut. What this is going to do is resensitize your body. It's going to help you become insulin sensitive again. It's going to give your body and your digestive system a bit of break. It's going to lose any little bit of fat you gained over that time. And then you continue on with the bulk. A mini cut is not a 12-week or a 6-week diet. It's basically a 2 to 4 weeks, maximum 4 weeks aggressive cut, okay? When I say aggressive cut, like you're losing between higher than 0.5% of your body weight a week. So like between 0.6, anyway, I would say 0.5 to 1% of your body weight a week. Like for me, if I'm going to mini cut, going from 4,700 a day, I would just drop down to 3,000. Why? Because my appetite is not going to be there. And because it's just going to give my body a rest. And that diet is not going to feel like a diet. Like when you mini cut, it's just like, holy fuck, I'm so glad I don't have to eat so much food all the time, you know? And because it's only a few weeks, it's get in, get out, get rid of that dot, get rid of any little bit of fat that's gained, and then you go back into a gaining phase, okay? So mini cut, a shorter period of time, more aggressive, 2 to 4 weeks max. I would literally say like 2 to 3 weeks, okay? More aggressive, a little bit faster on the fat loss, finish that, and then you go back into a gaining phase, okay? So if we were to kind of think about this, you know, as an ideal situation, an optimal situation, which not always going to be optimal, but it would be like, let's say 10 weeks of 10 weeks of gaining, 2 weeks of a mini cut, 12 weeks of gaining, or another 10 weeks of gaining, 2 weeks of a mini cut, and then the last 10 weeks of gaining, so 30 weeks of gaining total, 6 weeks of a mini cut during that whole time. That's 16 weeks. No, it's not. Sorry, that's 30, 10, 20, 30. I can't even do this. 36 weeks total, which actually will probably bring you to August, September anyways. Then you do a 8 to 12 week diet based on how much fat you need to lose, and that's a successful gaining phase basically. That would actually be fucking ideal. There you go. 10 weeks, 2 weeks, 10 weeks, 2 weeks, 10 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks. Boom. There you go. Right? That's what a progressive gaining phase could look like. All right? You don't have to mini cut, right? If you're gaining and you're looking good the whole time, don't fucking worry about mini cutting, okay? But also do not mini cut every 3 or 4 weeks. Like mini cutting, you have to be in a surplus at least, I'm gonna say 10 weeks, at least 10 weeks you have to be in a surplus, okay? Because again, it just fucking takes time for the body to keep progressing and gaining muscle. Now, as well as being in a surplus, you have to be in a surplus for 10 weeks or whatever. You have to be in a surplus daily, okay? Like you need to give your body a daily increase in calories so it has the nutrients to bias muscle gain. Because the body is not naturally gonna be like, yeah, we're gonna gain muscle. Like the body has so many fucking other things to do. You need to give it the extra calories, which is why the surplus is there, to recover, to adapt, to make progress, to gain muscle. You have to do that daily, okay? If you are like, oh, I'm gonna go out and socialize this weekend, so I'm gonna eat at maintenance or eat in a deficit, and then I'm gonna overeat on the weekend, and technically I'll be in a surplus. If you're technically in a deficit for 5 or 6 days, and then you're in a surplus on one day, you're not just gonna randomly gain muscle on that one day. That extra surplus is only gonna give you a smidge amount of muscle, and the rest will be body fat. So you're actually gonna fuck yourself in the long run if you do that, all right? You don't save calories and stuff on a surplus. If it's a day where it's higher calories, guess what? You just had the higher calories and then you keep going with your surplus. And this is why mini cuts are there too. Because let's say you've had a few social events on during this gaining phase, you end up gaining an extra 1.5 kilos that you didn't want to gain during this phase. That's what the mini cut's for. Okay? We don't save calories in a surplus. We don't try and bias it to the weekend or any of that shit. You eat in a surplus daily. And if that means you accumulate a little bit more fat gain over time, who gives a fuck? It's gonna come back off, okay? Like there have been days where I've had 6,000 calorie days, 4,500 calorie days, 5,500 calorie days, like, cause I'm socializing and stuff now, it's coming up to Christmas time, I just eat food. And if I go over, I go over. If I go, it's like, fuck man. At the end of the day, if I gain an extra 1.5 kilos, it's not a lot of extra dieting for me. And I need to embrace the gaining phase and also learn to be like, oh yeah, it's okay if I eat a little bit more on one day. Like if I went that much over, because I'm not going to gain a huge amount of extra fat. It's not like I'm dirty bulking every day. It's just like, this is life. And also, again, this is going to put a really fucking good place, this is going to really help you get into a good mental place when you can just be okay with, if you overeat, you just keep committing to the process overall, okay? And that can really fuck with your head if you overeat one day. You're like, oh man, I'm already in a surplus. Oh no, I've eaten an extra 1,000 calories. Oh, that's like an extra, oh fuck, what's that? That's like an extra 120 grams of fat a week. Oh my God. Like, fuck me dead. Relax, okay? Like people get very neurotic about this shit. And again, you have to commit to this process, right? Don't overthink this stuff. So daily surplus, all right? Daily surplus. Along with that, training wise, I think there's another thing I have to cover here. Oh, 2 things, sorry, my bad. So secondly, let's talk about the nutrition. So with the nutrition side of things, obviously I talked about a daily surplus. You want to hit, protein is not as important in a surplus as it is in a diet and a maintenance phase. More about a diet phase. Protein is not as important, because you're going to have enough nutrients and a full amino acid pool basically all the time that your body's not going to be needing extra protein, right? So aim for give yourself that range as always, 1.6 to 2.2 grams. Don't try to go up to the 2.2 grams because you're most likely going to hit that just in everyday eating, basically. Because you have extra calories, trace protein will come in, you're most likely going to hit that 2.2 grams. So you eat that. You eat the minimum amount of fat a day, which is 0.6 grams per kilogram body weight. You can have more if you want, up to 1 gram if you want. But ideally, the more you can bias carbohydrates, the better. Carbohydrates are anabolic. Carbohydrates will help you push more in the gym. Carbohydrates will help you recover better. Carbohydrates will basically do fucking everything in a gaining phase. Fat is easier to store as fat versus carbohydrates, right? So if you want to, quote unquote, optimize, get your fats between 0.6 grams to 1 gram per kilogram body weight, get your protein between 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram body weight, and use the rest of your calories as carbs. And then every time you have to increase your calories, add more carbs, add more carbs. I'm eating 850 grams of carbs a day at the moment. A lot of fucking carbs. And they're great, right? So use them to your advantage. And then spreading your meals out to at least 4 servings of protein a day, okay? You want to get at least 25 grams of protein per meal over 4 meals. This way it's going to activate muscle protein synthesis. And talking about optimization here, because again, those of you who are listening to this are wanting to gain successfully, eat 4 meals a day with at least 25 grams of protein. At least, not maximum, at least, to get muscle protein synthesis activated 4 times a day. All right, that seems to be a good consensus. With that, try and spread them out every 3 to 4 hours, okay? You got to leave a gap there. So it's maybe you wake up, you have a protein shake. 4 hours later, you have a meal. 4 hours later, you have a meal. 4 hours later, you have a meal. Done. Can you eat between hand? Yes. But it's you can have a meal with a little bit of protein, but it's 4 solid servings of protein with at least 25 grams of protein, right? The rest of your meals, they can be snacks that have protein in there that you might be oh, but I ate 2 hours in between my protein main meals. It doesn't fucking matter. Just give the protein a gap is what I'm trying to say, right? And the reason also protein is less important is because you have so much food coming in, again, you're not going to be fucking deficient in protein, right? You're going to be digesting food from yesterday at 12 o'clock today. Me recording this now, it's 12 o'clock today. I'm still digesting food from yesterday. Pre-workout timing, who the fuck gives a fuck about pre-workout timing? You've got so much food in your body that you're always going to be good for pre-workout, basically, right? And the only other thing I would say is training wise. So based on what your goals are to grow, training wise, you have to push it hard, right? If you want to gain muscle, you have to be focusing on progressive overload, increasing reps, increasing sets, increasing weight, any of those things. Each week, it has to be a little bit harder than last week. I don't make the rules. That's just what it's got to be. And if you want to, focus on a specific muscle group, hit that muscle group 3 times a week, ideally. Okay, so we know optimal muscle gain workouts per set and workouts per week. Sets per week. So if you're getting a total of 21 sets per week for a muscle group up to 28 sets, you're gonna be pretty sweet there. So if it's glutes, you wanna train glutes 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You have 2 main glute exercises in each one because that's gonna be 6 exercises in total. If you're doing 3 sets for each, that's already 18 sets. If you're not going to 4 sets for each, that's 24 sets. You're fucking nailing it right there, right? That's not a lot, is it? Same as chest. You wanna grow your chest? 2 sets of chest on Monday, 2 sets of chest on Wednesday, 2 sets of chest on Friday. 6 exercises don't have to be different. They can also be the same. Believe it or not, you can dumbbell bench press twice a week if you wanted to, okay? You start off with 3 sets of each, that's 18 sets. You increase a set over all of them, that's 24 sets, right? You might even go to 5 sets. So either way, you're gonna be hitting that optimal number of sets. You just need to be making sure you're gonna be increasing the reps, the weight, the sets, perfecting technique, doing things like that, all right? So basically, commit to 4 months plus, eat constantly in a surplus daily. Don't be afraid if you go over calories, keep going daily. You can implement mini cuts when you need to. you got to keep training hard. All right? That's basically what you guys need to know. Now, as I said, it's easy to say all this stuff. It's harder to implement for yourself. So if you need help, if you are someone who's like, I want to fucking gain muscle, and you need help setting a program out, setting a nutrition plan out, and just making sure you're optimizing it, that's what my online coaching is for. So if you are interested, send me a message at Tyson the Trainer with 2 R's. I am happy to take on clients who want to gain and do it properly and make the most out of it and commit to it and get you guys, obviously where you need to go. Because again, it's very easy to have someone objectively tell you what to do versus getting stuck in your head. So if you are interested, message me on Instagram at Tyson the Trainer with 2 R's and we can talk about the programming. So until next time, guys, I hope you appreciate it. If you enjoyed this podcast, as always, make sure to share it and tag me on Instagram. And until next time, I'll speak to you then.